I was in college because my parents were like, you need to get a college degree. But I was literally like every weekend going to LA to try to get discovered, to get signed with an agency. And I said, if I get signed with an agency, I am dropping out of college, which is why I switched from engineering. Because why am I taking Calc 2 and doing all these things and grinding so hard in this space when I know for a fact I do not want to go into engineering?
We all got an opinion, but can you back yours up? Where you get your sources from? Hope that don't got you stuck. We gon' check you and your understanding of knowledge. That's regardless if you finished school or went to college. Not everything is as black and white as it seems. This show here is about expressing what you mean. Whether you get canceled or whether you get played. Welcome to the Cancel Podcast with Elliott and Jay.
So hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Content Podcast, where we aim to challenge one's own thoughts by bringing unique, creative, and potentially divisive topics to the table for discussion. As always, it's your boy Darius, aka Jay Sarad, representing Legendary Media Group. And today, my guest hosts are going to be Ms. Tyler Chanel, Mr. Aaron Escobedo, and Mr. Rothman Sosa. And what we're going to discuss today is going against the grind. So what I want to start it off by is, what is your definition of the grind and what does it mean to you? And anyone can lead us off on this one.
I can kick it off here. So I think on purpose, the idea of being on the grind is vague. And how I personally take that is I take my efforts to improve myself as a human being. And that's my definition of how I look at it. Like, am I doing this? Does this bring me value? Am I getting better, stronger, smarter, learn something, wiser? That's the grind.
Okay. So for you, it's all about internal growth. That's what you say the grind is. It's kind of like you making a better version of yourself on like the day-to-day and how you see yourself from years from now, decades from now, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a continuous improvement.
Okay. I like that. Tyler Rothman?
I think the grind is like, now that I have different feelings than I did before about grind culture. Grind is like literally exerting all of your energy, to achieve whatever that, that goal of yours is, or your internal project, whatever it is. It's using everything you have and almost exhausting all of your resources to achieve it. And you're literally grinding yourself down. So I feel like I have more of a negative view of the grind compared to Aaron.
Okay, we will get into that too, because I kind of like that. So it's like if it's about pure exhaustion, it's more so of just putting yourself to the limit, like to your breaking point, and making sure that you get whatever you want and doing everything within your effort to reach it.
Correct.
That sounds right. Okay. All right, Rothman.
My definition is very similar to Tyler's. It's about working yourself to the bone for a goal, and sometimes at all costs, with negative, effects on yourself. I have a more negative view on it. But for me, the grind is just, nonstop working yourself to the bone to achieve a goal. Okay,
I like that. So Tyler and Rothman, more of a negative view on the grind. Aaron, you would say you're more of like a positive view. Is that correct?
I would. Neutral to positive for me.
Okay, I will say I lean more neutral to positive as well, but let's see. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's perspective. Okay, so a general definition that I came across when searching the grind, and there was a lot of variances, like even the most like direct ones that says like, oh, it's a process of making something into like a more malleable kind of material. And I'm like, that's not the grind we're talking about today. And the other one was also on like the dance floor where it talks about two human bodies. And I was like, that's not what I'm searching for. So not the only, but the most complete one that I saw was something that's difficult or unpleasant that requires a lot of effort. And examples were the college grind, the work grind, the parental grind, and so many other versions of the grind. So as we dive into it, I want to ask you all, what are some of the takeaways from your experience of being within the grind or being a product of the grind? Like, what are some positive aspects that, have contributed to who you are now? And how did those experiences shape you?
Well, we could this could be a 3-hour conversation.
I would say, even though I have a negative view of the grind, like I'm very proud of the, time I did spend grinding. Like I feel like I put my entire effort in achieving my goals. And because of it, now I'm seeing the quote unquote success from it. Like I'm living comfortably in LA. Like I have money, I have, a savings. And I think when I was grinding though, I was putting a strain on like my relationships. Like even my best friend, she lived in Atlanta. She would come visit me in Vegas. I've been working since I was like, hell, I don't know, 16, however old they can, you are when you can start working. But she would visit me in Vegas and I would not take time off work at like my little retail job back then. And like, she'd have to visit me at work. But like, I was like, yeah, you're visiting, but I need to make this money. I need to grind kind of mindset. And so I think my relationship stuff suffered. I don't think my mental health suffered so much. Like I'm actually okay grinding all the time, but my grandpa, he's an entrepreneur and he was saying, he was grinding so much that I definitely impacted his family relationship and his own mental health. So once I learned that, I was like, okay, I need to maybe chill out on, grinding so hard.
So would you say like having him around to kind of speak on his experiences kind of shaped you in a way to kind of minimize the negative risk from it, to kind of say like to be aware of it and how you're going to go about it moving forward as yourself as an entrepreneur?
I think so. And for so long, like for me, like making money and like being successful is like my main goal in life. And now that I feel like I have, like, I'm comfortable in the money I've made, now I'm like, oh, I guess I should focus on these other things like health, like health is so important. That's something that I never prioritized.
Okay. And not just mental health too, but like also like physical health
as well. Yes. Yeah. Like drinking enough water in the day, like simple things. Like my fiance always laughs. He's like, he's like, people, like you have a good social life, like you have money and all this stuff. And like, he's like, you have things that are hard for people, but you can't drink water. Like you can't make for yourself breakfast. Like, so I'm still learning, but it's simple things like that, where that was never my focus. Like I didn't care about like taking care of myself came last.
Okay. That's a pretty, okay. We'll touch base on that too then. Okay. Rothman, Aaron?
I've had different grinds. I think for me, I've gone through different stages or different phases of different grinds. So, up until when I was, say, in high school, I didn't really have a grind. My parents were the ones that grinded for me to provide me with food, a roof over my head, clothes, etc. Once I, left high school and I had to, kind of start going into the real world, I had to start grinding for my own things. I had to start getting a job, start, thinking about my future. And that's when my college grind started. And so now that I'm done with college, I've started kind of like two different grinds. It's the job grind and also kind of like what Tyler was saying, there's the other things that I've neglected during my college grind, like my mental health, my physical health, and so now it's I'm working on those things. I'm working on those grinds. So I think once, I get to a point where I'm comfortable in my job, where I'm, no longer have to really, fight to get to where I need to be, or once I get to where I want to be, it's going to be a different grind then.
Okay. So would you say the grind is ongoing? Like, do you feel like it's never really going to stop? You just feel like it's going to keep evolving into something different?
I think so. I mean, it really depends on what your situation is. For someone who, say, may not have prepared for the future too well, they need to keep grinding for, to put food on the table, to, keep the roof above your heads. If you prepared for it, you grinded in a certain way such that, you can retire, then, it may stop there, or something else may come up. A family member comes down with an illness, and now the grind is taking care of them.
Okay. Aaron, what about you? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so to your last point, Rothman, I think I agree with you in a sense. I don't think the grind ever stops. It's a continuous growth of a person, because life happens, things happen. And I think actually, in my opinion, if you chose to stop grinding, I think it'd make you very unhappy as an individual. I think we need to have personal growth, and we need stuff to do. As human beings, we're gonna get bored. Like retirement sounds great on paper, but you got to do stuff still. That's why people who live the longest are still doing yoga. They have gardeners. They're doing activities just to keep on going.
So you would say it's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah. Other than that, for myself, I feel like I grew up in a very work ethic culture. So I'm Hispanic. My family was very hit hard with like, if you're not using your hands, you're not working. So like, it's very like
strictly like physical labor. Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of Hispanics in America, where the working class is, you got to work. That's just what it is. There's no fun isn't a thing. You have to put food on the table for your family or provide for somebody else in some form or fashion. And that's just how it goes. There's no discussion for it. Like my family, they ran a newspaper. So on the weekends, I would wake up at 4 a.m. with my dad, and we would go deliver papers. That's what we did. Like, that's just how it was. Eventually, like, I got into the car world, and if you're not the one wrenching your car, you're not working. Like, you're never going to make it. The goals you have are never going to be achieved unless you put in the work that you need to get that, make that goal happen.
Okay. Did you also embrace that? Like, as you became an adult, did you embrace that work heavy, minimize kind of fun approach as well? Or did you want to stray away from that and kind of see like what kind of benefits there were from incorporating the fun aspect?
Yeah. So for me, so my family, like, eventually I got kicked out of my home when I was like 15. So I was living homeless for a long time in my life. So I feel like my teenage years and early 20s was stripped away of any fun because I had to survive. Living homeless or sleeping under bridges or in your cars for years is not a good look. So you gotta do what you can to try to make it. So I never got to have any fun. And then eventually I would go back to college. It wasn't that much fun there either. I never went to a college party once in my life.
Yeah, but there's also engineering though. That's a sacrifice.
That's true. But I knew I wanted to do that because I knew the work and effort I put in here would pay off. That's why I chose this route.
Okay.
Now it's funny because I've been out of college now for 2 years, and I think I'm finally in my 30s. I just turned 34.
I just joined the 30s club, so
yeah. And now I feel like, I've never lived a life, and now I'm trying to incorporate it more. Where, I can go to a concert now. I can like go on a hike or just go around and like do things like what normal people do, in quotes, that I never got to enjoy. And now the fruits of my labor are showing themselves.
Okay, it's definitely paying off at the end. See, I think that's a good transition, because the next question I want to ask all of you too is like, what are the ways that you all kind of embrace and adapt to your mental health or your physical health as well? Because like for Aaron, it does seem like now you're kind of making up for that lost time and really bringing that now into the present, so you can now enjoy going out, whether it's an active social life with other people, if it's just enjoying the environment, like things of that nature. Like how do each of you kind of like embrace that, and kind of what activities do you do to ensure that your mental health and physical health too is all happy and in line with one another?
Well, I still like to run marathons. I go to the gym still, do my thing. And other than that,
Portland's perfect for that too, by the way.
What was that?
I said Portland is perfect for that too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. But now it's funny, I make it a point to like go out on Fridays. Like it's important. Like I'm supposed to do it. It doesn't mean like I'm not partying, but like go to the bar, go somewhere that I haven't been yet, and just like sit and enjoy a drink. Like just be out there. Because one of the things the pandemic world has taught me is like, well, I don't like sitting on my chair for 8 hours a day. So I literally am a dog. I take walks like twice a day in the middle of the day. And fortunately, I live next to a river and like trees, so that's always nice. But getting out there and socializing just as a human thing to do is really important for me.
Nice. That's actually how I made it through college. So I know some of you would wonder like where I would always get the energy from. And I took similar steps to kind of say like this Friday or this Saturday, I'm going out don't care about the repercussions on Monday. That's going to be a Monday or Sunday night issue. But that's what allowed me to kind of go as hard as I did for the grind. Like, going to, like, as we're all college grads and everything, we know the struggle of all-nighters, overnighters sometimes, limited amount of food, things of that nature, all those variables. But yeah, I can absolutely agree, is telling yourself to step out of that grind mentality just for a little bit. It really did wonders for me. Like, there was several times, like, I had a lab report due or some sort of big exam to study for, and I was like, you know what? I'm going dancing. I'm getting a drink. I need to do something, because even if I would have spent that extra hour or two studying, there's no guarantee that the results are going to be any better. There's a possibility that the results would have worsened. So I can agree with that, actually. Just doing something in the free time, it helps. Like, just going out and saying, I don't know specifically what it's going to be, but I know that I'm going out. So I can agree with you on that, Aaron.
I've also, like Aaron, I like to go on walks, so during my lunch breaks from my actual job, I always go for a walk. But one thing I think is so important, and when I was in college, I missed out on a lot, was sleep. So now for me, like, taking care of my physical health and like mental health as well, is I will make sure I get at least 8 hours of sleep. Taking a nap is like my best form of self-care. If I'm feeling worn out and drained, I'm like, okay, I need to nap. That is so freaking important. But since I work a 9 to 5, and then I also have 2 other side hustles, it's like my day doesn't end at 5. My day ends at, sometimes 2 in the morning. Like, so I've gotten really good about setting work hours for my side hustle. So I'm like, okay, I'm only going to work on, thrifts and tangles for 4 hours each day. And then I have a hard stop at, I don't know what time, whatever time I set for myself. But doing that, I realize no matter what, there's always work to be done, and it all doesn't have to get done in that day. So, I always set my goals on like top priorities, but before I'm like, I need to get it all done today. And if I don't, I failed. And it's like, no, like, it can wait till tomorrow. Like, who freaking cares if whatever doesn't update on my blog? Like, it's fine.
Yeah. I would say, how do you get the additional energy to kind of go those long hours too? Because that sounds like a lot. Like, I know for me, 12-hour days, like, luckily they've been rare, but they've been brutal. So to kind of have that consistently in your schedule, where do you find that energy from? And how can you share that with us?
Yeah. So I don't drink coffee. I don't know where I get the energy. I think because it is the grind. Like, I want to be able to work for myself through my own business. And that just inspires me and excites me. So I am excited to do, like, I get through my job to, after my job is done at 5 p.m., I'm like, yes, I get to work on Thirst and Tangle. So I feel like that fuels me, like that excitement for it. But yeah, there is no trick to, getting extra energy. I guess you have to be internally excited for your project.
I like that. Okay, so it's more of like an internal energy that you're able to just kind of utilize in the day to day. You're not like secretly solar powered or anything like that.
It might be the naps. The naps are the secret. I don't nap every day, but yeah, sometimes, after work, maybe take, an hour nap and then get started. So maybe that is
honestly, they help. Like, one thing I'm learning as an adult, all you can chime in on this too, is like, naps are needed. Like, at one point I know that there was a stigma that naps are deemed like lazy. Like, there's something that, I was like, okay, why do you need a nap? Like, everyone sleeps at night. It's like, nah, depending on what you do throughout the day, those naps are needed and also wanted. Because I would do something similar, especially now that I'm working remotely. Sometimes instead of lunch, I'll take a nap. Like, I'll take a nice 30, 40 minutes, wake up, have 10 minutes left. All right, let me check my Insta. Let me just do something chill, and then go back to like the normal work mode. So I think it's highly possible those naps, they help.
I think the naps, and then also like going outside and getting sunlight, like sunlight beaming down on your body is good for you. So I think that maybe provides some sort of energy.
So there's some solar power.
Yeah, so I think there is something to the solar power now that you mention it.
So next time I see if there's like a panel on your back, I'm like, okay, I see it all now.
Okay. As you're sharing that story, something that reminds me of too is that I feel like you're going to get a lot of energy when you have something that you're aspiring towards. So if you want to be, your own boss and be entrepreneurial like that, that's what motivates you every day. That's why you're putting the extra hours in. Sure. You're setting your own schedule because that's something you want. So you're going to internalize it and make it happen.
That's true.
And
I like
it's not
that.
something that like you're dreading, you know, it's something that's fun and you already enjoy it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's true.
I can give an example. So one of the things that my boss wanted me to do was take the professional engineering exam for our field. And so you have to study for this, you know, outside of work. You know, you can't, you know, when you're at work, you know, you do work. And so I had to make time for this. And this is an exam that's only offered once a year, right? And it's, you know, all PE exams are pretty difficult. You have to dedicate a lot of time to it. And for me, there was the financial incentive. There was also kind of like the prestige, you know, incentive, having the title next to your name. And I dreaded it. I absolutely hated it. It's not something that I'll be like too open about it, because I was able to like pass the exam and like, you know, just put in the work. And even though I wanted it, it was still difficult, you know. And there was some love and some hate in there as well, but I definitely did not enjoy it. And I think one thing is, you know, not all. I think we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, not all grinds are pleasant, but sometimes they're necessary. You know, if I want to continue in my career, I need to do this grind. And you know, I could do it next year, or I could do it now, and because I don't know what next year's going to look like, and I'd rather just get it over with now. I dread it every single day, but you just got to do it.
Yeah, and you got through it, and you did get your license. So congrats on that.
No license yet. No license yet. I need 4 years experience. I just passed the exam.
Well,
the hard part's over.
The hard part is over. The time restriction is the only thing holding you back for now.
Yep.
So once that requirement is met, that's when I'll give you the formal congratulations.
Yep.
But I will say congrats on passing the exam for the time being.
Thank you.
So,
You know,
so what?
Yeah, go ahead. Rothman, real quick, is that, you know, so we all did our college grind thing, but for me personally, I don't think I've ever like done something where I was like, I really dislike that, or like I didn't enjoy that experience. When it comes to at least school or tests, or even just in life, I can't really say like that thing sucked and I hated it, but I did it anyway. Maybe it's just like a mindset thing for me, but I feel like I enjoy the difficulties of stuff.
Well, sometimes it's nice too, like Rothman, I'm sure when you finish the exam, you were proud of yourself, you know, because if it's a difficult exam, so even if you're dreading it the whole way, there is some kind of thing where it's like, you know, okay, maybe, you know, that was, you know, it wasn't as bad as I made it out to be, or maybe it was, because I switched out of engineering after 3 years. I'm like, I can't. So
right. You know, and, you know, I think Aaron just hit it right on the head. Is, you know, there's different mindsets, there's different perspectives on all of this. What may be a grind for, so like Tyler, you were saying that sometimes you stay up till 2, you know, working on all your other side projects and side hustles. Oh my gosh, I am lights out at like 10 or 11. I can't do that. So I think it's really, you know, we mentioned earlier too, just how we're also influenced by the people that we see or that we grew up with and how they do their grinds. You know, my parents, you know, I'm also Hispanic. And so my parents have mostly dealt with manual labor. And so I've seen how they grinded, and that has kind of given me an idea of how I think, you know, the grind should be. And as I've grown, you know, and seen, you know, how different people do their grinds, I've taken in that information and kind of modified it and be like, hey, maybe the way they did their grind, I don't agree with it, or it's not for me, but I can take a little bit of, you know, someone else's perspective or methodology and incorporate it into my idea of the grind.
To make it more unique and to kind of make it more of your own, to kind of give you that extra ownership to say like, this is Rothman's grind.
Right.
Okay.
Because Tyler's grind, I can't do that. But I'm sure with my grind, there's some things that you guys are like, oh, you know, maybe that's not for me.
Yeah. Oh, I even think like having those experiences and differences, that's what allowed all of us to kind of get this far in life too, and kind of make us the unique individuals that we are. Because what I'm hearing from each of you is that there is some sort of, you know, familial connectivity towards it. Like whether it's the grandparents, the parents, there's some sort of aspect to kind of say, you know, I've witnessed this grind early on, what do I want to take away from it, and what do I want to change about it? And that's what's making that own unique flavor. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it's that for me for sure. But also, I've lived on the streets, man. I know how people do it.
Yeah.
And by seeing the lifestyle that those people have chosen to live, that's a whole other discussion. But I know where I don't want to be. So in order to not have that, I know what I need to do to not be there, which is you got to work. You have to, there's no free lunch. You have to do work in order to get an outcome.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
That's probably where the mindset of it a lot comes from. I'm like, oh, this is fine. I'm not homeless. We're good. Like, just keep going.
So would you say too, like for your particular experience, like being at that level of like, almost like nothing, like that aspect of nothingness, and then working your way back up, would you say like that further reinforced like why you don't need that, that villain of like the things that you don't like you're kind of just motivated by the difficulty itself? Because it does seem like with myself included, Tyler and Rothman, it's more so of, we know what's unpleasant. We know that we have to embrace the boogeyman or boogie woman, but to make sure that we address those obstacles directly and say like, this is a challenge, but I'm not going to let you hold me over. I'm going to get to whatever I need to get done. But for you, it seems more so of like a neutral perspective. And would you say coming from such a low, I don't want to say like low level or low state to be in.
Oh, yeah,
but
I was bottom for sure.
yeah, like starting from like a bare bones kind of approach. Would you say that's kind of, maybe that was the ultimate villain for you? That was the boss to overcome. And so now everything else is much more minimal relative to that.
Yeah, that definitely is like the haunting feature in the back of my mind of like, that was a reality. That's possible. Don't go through that again. So do all the things you need to not have that happen.
I like that. Okay. Because I would say even for me, I would say specific obstacles throughout undergrad, throughout my early career, there's certain tasks that I look at as like that, that opposition where I'm just like, they're in the way. How can I overcome it? How can I grow? But I think the overall accumulation of that is like how I'm viewing the situation as a whole, but it sounds like you got all of that up front. So where you don't have to worry about anything that's much smaller, much more minimal. Everything else for you is just kind of, it was like, yeah, I've handled harder lessons. I've had harder experiences.
Exactly. I would say that. I think about that constantly. Like, oh, I've had it worse. Like, nothing bothers me. Like, it's impossible to bother me now. I go, like, just the other day, actually, I was moving my TV in my place. I dropped it. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, well, I'll get another one. Like, nothing bothers me. Like, I've seen the worst. And I've seen a lot worse than that, too, because a lot of friends and family are dead or in jail. So I've just seen a lot of traumas in my life. And so now I'm like, we're good. Like,
it's almost like you've been desensitized to a lot of this.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Another thing, what I was thinking about too, in a similar way, going through school, was like, I was in my 20s, grinding out the engineering stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Some of our forefathers were in World War II, watching their peers die. I can study for this exam. I'm good.
Well, we do live in, so like, I think that's kind of interesting, kind of seeing like the labor aspect. Well, because Tyler, you said your grandfather was more of like an entrepreneur as well, right? So he was more like business hands-on. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And my dad too.
Okay. Because I will say, I think that's kind of an interesting trend. Like when we look at society of where we are now, growing up like in the, the 2010s, the 2020s, and really getting our careers established, things are much more different than how they were back then. Like for our parents, for our grandparents, tech helps out a lot. Like there's unique aspects of it, but we're not really doing too much hands-on anymore. Like I know my hands get dirty on the keyboard. That's the worst I do. And I blame chocolates for that. But it's like knowing that the world is so different. Do you feel like that kind of opened up additional opportunities for us as well? Do you think it made things easier or made things more challenging or just even different?
I think it definitely opens up opportunity. Not only in terms of entrepreneurship, coming up with new processes, new methodologies to create work, but also for, just yourself, learning those things. So one thing that I always think about is I work in CAD programs, computer aided design. And so back in like the 80s, maybe up until some of the 90s, all of the drafting, all of the plans for, when you're building a building or whatever, people were drawing this stuff by hand. They had the scale, they had their pencil, and they were over these giant pieces of paper and they were just going at it. So it would take them, days, weeks, months to put out, a set of plans. I can go in there now and use tools to put out this set of plans, anywhere from a day to a bigger set, maybe in a week. And, this is the increase in productivity has just been incredible. And so this is kind of one of the things I have the issue with is the grind. Certain types of grinds don't need to be as difficult as they are now. And I think certainly for someone like, say, myself, my productivity versus someone who was back in the 80s, drawing by hand is orders of magnitude higher. And so I think sometimes there may be a little bit of a disconnect because I feel like I'm, grinding my butt off and maybe I don't need to be.
And would you say that's more so of just the traditional societal influence? Would you say to kind of
Absolutely.
continue?
Absolutely. So maybe, once people have seen how productive we can be, I'm sure time like deadlines have gotten, smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so now it's like we've artificially, or I think in some ways the grind has been artificially like kept alive for some things, not all grinds, but in terms of labor, I think in some areas, especially where we use technology that has made things so much easier, the grind maybe is not. It's not. I don't want to say appropriate, but maybe it's not required or needed.
Like we've added aspects to it that is essentially unnecessary. Like for the growth that we made in terms of alleviating pains, we're now creating pains to go with that growth.
Exactly.
Okay, Tyler, Aaron?
Yeah,
That actually opens up a good question for me too. Like, if we have enough time, I'll tie it in because I have a very good question for that. But yeah.
Well,
I
I
think
was
that's
gonna say,
interesting. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say the grind, like what my grandpa and my dad grew up in Southside Chicago, right? So they had to grind as entrepreneurs in a city that's segregated, right? So like I don't have to grind as hard as them in certain aspects. So I think we definitely have it easier, especially with, the progress we've made with a lot of like race issues, but there's still, we still have a lot of work to go. But I do think in that aspect, but I do like Rothman's point about even with tech too, it's a lot more accessible for people to, make their dreams happen, especially in the online space. Like I do all my side hustles are online and there's a lot of money to be made in those spaces. So it's just really interesting how things have changed over the years.
Yeah, because also too, like since you're also like influencer as well, it's like even on your page alone, you have 10,000 people that you can now have access to immediately, like at your disposal to kind of say like, hey, here's my recent post, and now have thousands and some people even millions of viewers all in the course of an hour, 2 hours,
instead of handing out like pamphlets by hand or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, because like I will say, one thing that we all kind of benefited from is this thing you guys might have heard of. It's called Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting bigger, so you might hear about them in the near future, if not now. But yeah, that wasn't a thing at one point in time. Like everything that we have at our fingertips, that we can query up within minutes is something that, well, actually, I'll say seconds too. Like you have like decent Wi-Fi. It's like that would take people weeks, months, even years of just studying. Like going to libraries, finding out if the book that you need is even available, and then having to actually act upon that, build that knowledge. And if you had to check out something else, you would have to go back and now reference that. versus us, we can open up several tabs and just click back and forth.
But that's something that throws me off. So in college, I get like when you have to study for tests and whatnot, like, no Google, no cheating, whatever. But in the real world, when you're at work, you do just quickly Google an answer. So it's almost like the college grind is forcing you to do more than you need to. Like, we have access to technology. In the real world, no one's going to be testing you on these things. Like, you're just going to pull up a tab and pull it up. So I do get frustrated with that aspect, because I think that is such a valuable skill for someone living in the 21st century to be able to know how to utilize Google, and get the answer. Because a lot of things I do in my job, I have no idea about insurance, really, so it's like I could just quickly Google and learn what I need to learn to, do the project. So
it's much more optimal. It's much more
exactly.
It saves time, energy, everything. See, I think that's a perfect example of what Rothman is mentioning, like that unnecessary, hurdles that we now create. Like, we live in a society where we're like, hey, we created all these ventures where things are supposed to be much more, easily accessible and, being utilized. But yet, for some odd reason, we said, let's also create some extra hurdles. Like, let's get rid of the big bosses so we can put a bunch of minions in. And it's like, it's not really needed.
Well, it would be like Rothman, how you said they used to draw CAD designs. I don't know in college if they had, like, it seems like take your test, you can't pull up Google, whatever. It's like, okay, you guys draw it, so now you understand the basics, but you have this program you can use. It's like, why do we even need to draw it anymore? We don't.
Yep.
But I get I don't know. I get learning as a very basic level to see this is what people used to do.
I think on that point, STEM is very different than traditional stuff, quite honestly.
In terms of like evolution, or in which
it's terms of Googling things.
Okay.
You're just not going to be able to do, if you don't know that you can't do differential equations on their own, Googling isn't going to help you. Like, you have
a fair point.
Basic knowledge in order to get yourself going, to know what to Google and like where would you even look stuff up. So that's, at least when the scientific fields, you need that. Like, school is very necessary to like know what the hell, because otherwise you're completely lost.
Yeah. Like we'll definitely need some sort of foundation. I do agree with that. But it's like, at what point should we start learning the modern tools? Because like I would say our foundation should be our initial 2 years in college, or our initial 2 years in our careers. But then at some point, if the tools are already there and they're readily accessible, at what point are we trading off learning unnecessary foundation versus necessary tool utilization?
So here's an interesting point. Actually, somewhat pings on Rothman's idea too. So Rothman, you were mentioning how, which is true, I 100% agree. We have more sophisticated tools that make us way more efficient in our day-to-day jobs, right?
Right.
So you still got 8 hours in a day. If you could do a job that would have taken someone in the 80s 4 hours, but now you can do it in 5 minutes, what do you do with the rest of the 3 hours?
Nap.
Well, that's kind of what we were talking about, is we fill in the gaps, right? So, and sometimes we fill in the gaps with more work. We take on more than we can chew.
So exactly. I agree.
Right. So, even though, just like you said, I can do a task in 5 minutes and I have, 7 hours, 55 minutes left in the day. Now this allows my company XYZ, to take on more work. Right. And so I don't want to tangent too much on this, but one of the problems that I have with this is, if I'm doing the work of like 20 guys from back in the 80s who got paid around the same that I do now, adjusting for inflation, why am I, where is the productivity of my labor going? Where is the monetary value of my productivity going? But I'm just going to throw that one out there.
So I have 2 comments on that. Number one, interestingly enough, so before I worked for the company I work for now, I worked for a Japanese company. And Japanese work culture is very traditional. As an example, you showed up, they don't have cubicles, they had like long tables. It was all open office space style. And what happens is when the manager or your supervisor or the boss shows up, you don't leave the job, you don't leave the office until
they leave.
What that means is you're spending 12 hours a day when you probably got done with your work, like in 4 hours, idling around. You have to find something else to do. So that's interesting to think about. So then what do you find yourself doing? Well, that's a whole nother discussion too. On a secondary point though, kind of leading into what Tyler was saying too, I think the biggest thing that college probably teaches you is that, hey, you're going to take 4 classes, 5 classes a semester or a quarter, depending on what you got. You got to learn to manage this. Time management is probably the most important thing you figured out in college. And that translates directly to the real world because, to your point, you can finish one task. Now you have to fill your day with other things. And all of a sudden you have 12 projects on your table that week and you have to figure out how to manage it. And that's the college experience that really harpens on that for sure.
And one thing I want to add is if you do finish, the difference between, working for a company versus you being a freelancer or working for yourself. At my job, we have people who are hired as, independent contractors. If my job asks me, we need you to create 3 graphics and, we have your labor for 8 hours. It might not take me that long to create the graphics. And now I have to figure out what am I going to do with the extra, 5 hours of my time now that I finished this task versus they will pay that contractor specifically to create those 3 graphics. And that's all the contractor has to do. And they don't have to worry about what else they've done with their time. They've done the task. And that's why for me, I think being an entrepreneur is so important because yes, I deserve to get paid for the work I did and for the projects I took on. But like now I have to sit here for 5 hours and find more work to do versus I completed the project. You can pay me to do another, I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does make sense. Yeah. It's definitely more so because I think any full-time salaried employee kind of deals with that where it's like, how can I use the free time where I still look productive? Like working remotely, we all have Microsoft Teams. Back then it used to be like Skype and stuff like that, where it would literally track your activity. It would say, is this person on? Is this person presenting? Is this person away? Is this person offline? But I think as we move more and more towards like remote culture, people, that creates additional anxiety. Mm-hmm. Like people say, like, I'm done with everything that I need to do, but what can I do here, to not get in trouble, essentially, to not look like I'm just eating the money and just saying like, oh, pay me more for me to lay here.
But you're getting penalized for finishing a project quickly, right? Like, oh,
yeah, which should be a reward
now versus the independent contractor. Bravo, you finished the project. Here's another one. So I don't like that aspect of it. It's like, okay, you finished the project quickly. And it used to take people forever to do. So now let's give you more work and pile it on. And now you have to grind harder.
Exactly. No, I can agree with that. Like, honestly, so one thing I want to ask too is like, because the one thing when comparing like entrepreneurs versus, the employer-employee relationship is it always comes down to, working to work or working to live. And it seems like those 2 aspects kind of like coincide with each one of those approaches. So like, for example, because I actually wrote these ones down too, where it's like some people, they want to go the traditional route, work as an employee, try to move up the corporate ladder and just look forward towards retirement. And that's pretty much the way it goes. It's a very linear approach, versus with being a business owner, there's all kinds of risk reward scenarios. There's retiring whenever you want, if you do choose to, and, seeing the aspect of both, like as we have all been like employees at some point, some still currently, I know Tyler, you're also like entrepreneur right now, but it's like, which one would you all feel is more efficient for yourselves or even for society as a whole? Because they both have pros and cons, but which one would you feel is more optimal?
I think Tyler would have some really good things to say about this because you're in both worlds. It sounds like you're in both worlds.
Yeah, I think for me and the life I see for myself, entrepreneurship just makes sense. Like I said, my family's, they're all entrepreneurs. It makes sense for me. But then there's also, bringing it back to grinding. When you work a 9 to 5, unless you do have to do additional studying after, take a test after, things like that, you're done after 5 and you have the rest of the day. With entrepreneurship, as I said before, the work sometimes is never done. And so entrepreneurs might be working crazy 10-hour days every day and never finding time to, breathe and come up for air. And of course, having the safety net of having a job, you probably have great benefits, you have healthcare, all the things. So I get the difference between both. And I hate right now there's stuff going around like, I don't dream of labor. Like, okay, that's some privileged stuff. Like people have to work. Like, I don't understand that. Or retire in your 20s. I just graduated college. Why am I going to retire? Like this makes no sense to me. So I do think, especially online and in the influencer space, everyone's rhetoric is like, leave your 9 to 5, work for yourself. And that's not everyone's dream. Being an entrepreneur is freaking exhausting, and you can fail and then you have no safety net to fall back on. But for me, I'm like, entrepreneurship makes me happy. I've been able to match the income I make at my job through my side hustle. So it's working, and I can have more flexibility. And in a few years, I would like to have a family, and I would like to spend more time with my family. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and that whole thing, like I would like to be able to spend time with my future kids. So that's why I think entrepreneurship works for me.
I like that. Okay.
Tyler scares me so much because I have thought about, in the future, like, hey, maybe I can start Rothman Engineering or something. No, it scares the crap out of me because you're right. There is no safety net. It's like your success not only is determined by, how much work you put into your company or what have you, but also it could just be chance. Say I start my firm and I don't get any work. I don't get any work for 6 months, for a year. I'm going to have to go back and work for, company XYZ. So it's not the scary thing for me is, even though I may grind so hard and, have the opportunity, to have this great reward for my grind, it just may not materialize.
I think my aspect of it is I don't really think about it of like working to work or work to live, or I don't even think of it as grinding. I just think about, is the time I'm utilizing in my day valuable? Is this what I want to do? Do I get joy out of my work? Does it bring me passion? If yes, then cool, do your thing. So for me, I do both. I have a quote unquote corporate job, but I do stuff on the side too. Like I'm a content creator. I've made stuff. I've been a racing driver for like over a dozen years. So I'm heavy in the automotive world and space. So I know all that world too. I guess for me, I'm lucky because I'm in a space where I can do both. I have a safety net where I have my nice cushy job. It's not cushy, but like it provides it's more than I need, even just on its own. But it gives me time to also do other passion projects. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a beautiful place. I think I'm very lucky.
Okay. There's definitely a little bit of the cushion there. We all have a little cushion where we are. Like I'm proud of all of us, like, knowing all of you. I know where we started off at as students and seeing where we are now. So we can embrace that cushion. Yeah. Whether it's like a fat cushion, thin cushion, there's some cushion.
Yeah. I'm not saying my job is easy.
More for the push.
But it provides more sustenance than I even know what to do with. So I'm like, all right, what else do I do?
Gotta go break a TV.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. Coincidentally, this ties in really well to because I want to ask you all like personal questions too. Having like the background with all of you and knowing a little bit more about you, it's like I feel like this would be like a good transition. So like Aaron, since you just went, I'll continue with you, and then I'll go to Rothman and Tyler as well. So for Aaron, the personal question I had for you, because I also know the other job opportunity that you had with Honda, I believe it was, right? Okay, yeah. So for you, my question was, knowing that you had opportunities to work for both of your dream jobs, because I know you'd also tell me you always wanted to work for Intel as well. So I'm glad that you ended up in that role. Like, what was the leading factor to your final decision? And then how does your current role allow you to integrate with your passion for racing and even esports? Because I know you like to play Smash Online too. So we still got to have that rematch.
Yeah. So going back 2 years ago when I had the opportunity, so I worked for Honda. Okay. I was working there. So I got to be integrated to the culture. You have to learn Japanese to work there. But at the end of the day, Honda does two things. They make motors and they make chassis. That's what the automotive world does. And I got my degree in electrical engineering. And one of the big interests of mine was like, I want to make the computers before the cars. And that's not what Honda does. Honda outsources that, and every OEM does that except for Tesla. They outsource that skill set. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. So that's where the Intel passion, and they paid me twice as much. So
that's always a plus.
Yeah, that was probably the root of it. And then the second piece of that question, I get to tie in my esports world every day. So right now, one of the things I've been able to do as a passion project is that I've been an esports coach. We just had a tournament last weekend where I was a coach for our team. We got destroyed, but it was all for charity anyway. And we got to chat with, we call them distributors. Like, I don't know if you've heard of companies like CDW or something. But so Intel is really different. There isn't not an Intel store. You're not going to find it on the streets. We make parts for other computer manufacturers to make their parts. So we're everywhere. We're like, if we like to make a hamburger, like a fast food analogy, imagine if we make the hamburger meat for every fast food chain. That's what Intel does. Okay. So because of that, we have all these connections and all these things. And that's why the tournament went well, because we're like, hey, all the fast food chains, let's all come together. McDonald's versus Burger King versus Jack in the Box versus Del Taco. Like, let's all do a thing. So that's fun. So I get a lot of fun there. I also get a lot of opportunities to give back. We currently have a high school esports league that we're running. Actually, it's out in Atlanta. So I get a lot of just passion project stuff I get to do. And that's really fun. And I get to share that with the world. And funny enough, not everyone, as you might expect, is a pretty geeky in the esports world at Intel, even though they're a big tech company. Mm-hmm. I would say, my personal opinion, they currently have a marketing problem of like going towards gamers, because the people who they put on stage for it's like this 60-year-old dude, like, we're gamers. I'm like, dude,
See, maybe you can fill that void for them so they can get better credit.
So that's a proposition I already gave of like, can I be the face of gaming for this company? And I get to do stuff like that just as a passion project outside of my traditional workflow. Yeah. So it gives me a lot of value, and I really enjoy the opportunities and the growth. And I get to meet, because of this like interest and like putting yourself out there, which is true for, I think, any role. If you want to succeed, you got to let the world know, put your name out there, talk to people, network. But I get to talk to the executives and give demonstrations to like investors. I'm like, oh, this person just put a couple billion in our company. Let me show you how our stuff works. I'm like, that's a pretty big deal. Like, just all these like things you get to do, just be like, it amazes me. It amazes me. And like I said, I'm just lucky. So that's how I tie my automotive stuff with the esports. And as a final point, Intel, they bought out a automotive autonomous driving company 3 years ago called Mobileye. And that's probably what sparked the interest in me to work for them, because they have this autonomous vehicle group. There's a connection there. So I could talk real nerdy with them about how all that stuff works and like what should happen when things happen in a car, because I have that deep intimate knowledge. And I just find myself in a beautiful, wonderful place because I get to be the best of all the things I like.
Yeah, I'm actually glad like that everything worked out for you so well. Like, that's actually really good alignment, to be honest.
Yeah, so, I feel very lucky, very lucky.
Yeah, so I'm hoping like if that is your next pivot to try to get into like the autonomous team, is like that's where you're going to try to go next within Intel?
For me, I probably see myself more not as an engineer on the autonomous team. Basically, I've come to realize that I love public speaking. I love being in front of cameras, and not all engineers do. So being able to have that knowledge and talk to people about what's really happening technical is probably more my expertise than just sitting behind the screen all day and just not talking to anybody, just doing it. So I find myself going to more public facing events rather than just straight engineering grind.
See, it sounds like you're turning to me back in undergrad. I knew I would influence you. I knew it.
Yeah.
No, but I'm happy for you. I'm glad that it's all working out really well. And one of these days we are gonna get that rematch going for Smash too. Like we'll chat about that. I'm much better than back then.
For sure, for sure. What's funny is, so the only other person who runs our entire esports organization at Intel, he is an old school professional Smash Brothers player too. So I actually met this guy in like 2004 at a tournament in Las Vegas in the Red Rock. And I was like, wait a minute, this guy looks familiar. Have I met you? And he was like, do you play Smash? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yo, that's so nuts.
See, that's why at one point I wanted to work for Nintendo too. I mean, I'm still open to it. So Nintendo, if you're listening, hit me up. But like, yeah, I wanted to be more invested in the Smash community. So, and I know that you were also one of the few individuals that like got me truly integrated, like with some of our other friends or other mutual friends too. So, yeah.
But for me, I've just chased my passions and they led me here, and I feel really lucky for it.
No, I like that. Okay. One thing I wanted to say too, because you mentioned the importance of like marketing and networking. And so Tyler, I'm gonna pivot to you on this one.
Okay.
So, because I know since you're an influencer, well, let me go ahead and read it since I wrote it down. So with you currently being a content curator, online influencer, as well as a model, how does your current lifestyle compare to what you envisioned when you were still a student studying mechanical engineering?
Oh my gosh. This is literally like everything I've ever wanted that I ever could have dreamed of. Ever since I was little, I was like, I want to be a model. I didn't know about like influencing and stuff when I was younger, but even when I was in college because my parents were like, you need to get a college degree. But I was literally like every weekend going to LA to try to get discovered, to get signed with an agency. And I said, if I get signed with an agency, I am dropping out of college, which is why I switched from engineering. Because why am I taking Calc 2 and doing all these things and grinding so hard in this space when I know for a fact I do not want to go into engineering? So I switched to psychology, and I was like, let me do something that comes natural to me. It was a fun major for me, but I didn't get discovered or signed with an agency until I graduated college. So I did get signed with an agency. And my agency is they do ethical. So I'm technically an ethical model. So my agency is Role Models Management, and we model for brands that are conscious about the impact they have on people and the environment. And that's everything I share online, right? So Thirst and Tangles, I talk about living sustainably and living an earth and money conscious lifestyle. So it connected back to my brand. And so now I work with companies on the influencer side and, create content for them. But then on the modeling side, I model for companies that I would feel comfortable promoting on my platforms as well. So it kind of comes together. But yeah, engineering, I don't know why I even went into engineering. It sounded so interesting. I wanted to make like artificial hearts at some point, but I was like, I need to actually... Yeah, that was like what I originally wanted to do. And we didn't have a biomedical engineering program. So I went into mechanical engineering. But yeah, I've always just wanted to model or, create content of some sort. So it kind of all came together. I'm very happy with where I am now.
I will say, like, knowing that engineering was like the secondary, that is a very strong secondary to have. Like, oh yeah, I'm creating artificial arts. I'm in biomedical engineering. That would have been nice.
Well, then it's weird too, because I feel like there's also like fear in chasing our dreams, right? Like when you go to these modeling agencies, you go and you get rejected time and time again. And it's like, okay, do I just give up and do engineering? And I was like, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to grind until I've exhausted all of my resources and everyone tells me this is not going to happen. Because even when I got into blogging, people were like, well, what are you really going to do? I was like, yes, I'm going to graduate with a degree, but I want to be a blogger. Bloggers make six figures, and they are making a great life for themselves. And
the growth is unlimited also too.
Exactly. And, a lot of bloggers, gone on to get Netflix series and, have their own makeup lines and all these amazing things. So for me, like, switching to psychology, getting out of engineering, realizing engineering was plan B. I was like, wait, why am I even doing this? So I switched to psychology and then graduated. And then my plan after I graduated with my psychology degree, I was like, okay, I'm going to, again, go to LA, apply to agencies, do, I don't even know what they call them, go-sees or whatever. That's when you go in person and like they meet you. Okay. I was going to do that. And I was like, everyone who graduates, they get a job months later. Like it takes a long time to get a job after graduation. So that's going to be my time to make modeling happen. Cause I'm very much a safe person. Like I'm going to have that safety net no matter what. Well, literally after I graduated, the day after my graduation, I got a call from the insurance company I am now. And they were like, hey, we want to interview you. And they offered me the job the next week. So I didn't get that summer to, go pursue modeling. So I'm like, this is never going to happen for me unless I actively pursue it, because I'm hoping it'll happen, or I'm hoping that there's a gap in my employment so I can go chase this. So once I realized, I started at the company as soon as I graduated college, I was like, okay, when is this dream ever going to happen for me? And then that's when I was like, okay, let me just.
Well, it does seem like, since everything is so like, since you're so integrated with everything now and it's going so smoothly, I think as you move further and further to becoming that full-time entrepreneur, that's when that gap is going to happen. Like that's when you're really going to, benefit from that downtime. So I think it definitely worked out better for you.
And I didn't ever want downtime. Like I am someone who's like always grind, like always taking the AP classes, like always like doing all the things in college, like being presidents of clubs, like doing the most. So for me, like I like the grind, but yeah, it worked out because I think the timing worked out because even though I worked at my company, as soon as I got out of college, that led me to discovering my modeling agency that is in alignment with my values. Because I think if I would have got signed to agencies sooner, like one agency wanted to sign me, they were not ethical at all. Their models are all over Forever 21 site, and I'm against fast fashion. Online, I drag Forever 21, I drag H&M. So if I signed with that agency, I would have been the face of the people I'm dragging. So I think it ended up working out how it should have. So anyways.
Yeah. No, I'm glad to hear that, actually, because like I think having that kind of nuance to know exactly what you want in that field, like within fashion, it's like I feel like that itself is special, because not only were you able to get into the industry, but you're able to align yourself with that specific tailored route. No pun intended, Tyler, but it's like that really works well with what you wanted. So I think that's actually pretty good. Pretty promising too, because like I'm still an avid supporter, as you know. So anytime when I come across your blog posts, I support, I share, I like and subscribe, hit the little bell notification at the bottom. So yeah, keep at it though. Like I support it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something really important there too, which I highly recommend, which is you gotta chase the dream. If you want it, there's no free lunch. You have to go out there and make the food yourself. You have to do it. You really do.
I like that analogy. I'd never heard that before, but I do like that. There's no free lunch, because even at some point you even have to be the one who makes the food.
Yeah. Like
we can streamline it. I can make it sound better, but I'm gonna quote you on that one day. And I know how much you love quotes too.
Oh yeah. I'm a big believer in that, Tyler, too. It's like you got to do it. You have to put yourself out there and take that risk. As they say, if you build it, they will come. 100%. You have to. That's the only way.
And what's the worst that can happen? They say no, but I found that if you exhaust all of your resources, right before you give up, that's when the opportunity comes. So just don't give up on your dream.
Oh yeah, agreed.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I've listened to probably every motivational famous person ever at some point, and all of them had almost the exact same story. Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team. Oprah didn't make it in media for a long time.
Yep.
All these people failed a ton, but they kept going, and now we know them because of their work.
And now we know their story.
Mm-hmm.
I can agree with that 100%. Okay. Well, so for Rothman, the question for you, so knowing that you have a background in poli-sci and political science, the one thing, because you did touch on, you may not want to do like an engineering firm in the future, but is there any opportunities where you want to kind of combine your interest in politics with engineering? Or like what other long-term goals do you see that align yourself with your interests as well?
Tying engineering into it.
Yeah. I'm gonna edit that part out. I would say, like, if you want to tie the two together, like, would you? Or is there anything that you like? How do you see your long-term goals or your future? And do you feel like your interest in politics can be tied into it? Because one thing, I'll add on to it too. One thing me and Aaron talked about as well is there's not many political figures that have some sort of tech background. And we feel like as problem solvers, as engineers, that could be a very useful skill set. So that's
absolutely. Absolutely. So that is actually a big problem that I have with the majority of politicians that are going out there today is they either just have law degrees or they may, in my opinion, they're completely unqualified for the role. And they have these opinions on these, scientific issues that may or may not be informed, right? And that's actually it's funny that you bring that up because I would love to run for some sort of office one day. I got to clean up the IG, got to clean up the Facebook first or delete it all the way through. But I would love to, bring my expertise, my background to it. One of the things, for better or worse, is politics. There's a lot of emotion involved, right? And so one of the things that us engineers have is, our entire education is based on logic and reason, right? And so, you have to be nuanced with it. You can't completely cut emotion out of it. Not every issue is black and white. I'd love for it to be, but it's not. But I think some issues, some solutions that may be presented, they have a more emotional, they come from an emotional place and not from a logical place. And maybe the logical solution, it doesn't sound nice, but it may be the best that we have right now, right?
Exactly.
And so for me, I would love to, run for, an assemblyman position. But I would have to, that would be something where I would have to have my own firm. I would have to grind for that. Definitely have my own firm, be an entrepreneur to have time to do that. Because, I have to fill up the other 6 months of my life while I'm, flying from here to Carson City, right? So it's definitely something I would like to do. It's not off the table. I think there's a lot of growth, a lot of personal growth that I still have to do. But yeah, I think that would be a great thing that I would love to do.
Okay. Absolutely. Because yeah, that's the one thing I noticed too with like let's take for example like climate change and global warming, things of that aspect. I feel like a lot of those perspectives are not coming from like a scientific background. And that's where something that, STEM grads and STEM professionals can now contribute on. Like even Elon himself, even though he's not in politics, he has political influence now. And he's very knowledgeable in the tech space. So it's like seeing more and more tech-based individuals out there going into politics and kind of shaping society, especially the American society. I think that is a huge opportunity for us to get better and to continue to improve.
Right. So, and the thing is, you have to have a person that kind of like Aaron, who loves to be in front of the camera. Because if you have Milhouse in front of the podium with his giant glasses, his Coke bottle glasses or whatever, the message may not come across, right? Yeah. So you almost have to, like, this is kind of like the ugly side of it, right? Is you have to be charismatic. You have to be able to sell things, sell yourself, sell your ideas. And, that's something where when you get to that bridge, you'll cross it. But it's definitely something where you can't just throw the guy who sits in front of the screen all day out there.
Agreed. It does take a unique combination of both. And I feel like that's something that me and Aaron have developed throughout our time under undergrad. But you also have it. So if you are comparing yourself to Milhouse, my assumption, I would still say you're very good Milhouse, and he's a pretty lovable character. But I think the leadership that we did throughout the student org, I think that does kind of contribute towards us getting closer to that route. Because I think, in my personal opinion, knowing all of you, it's like as engineers, we have much more social skills than a lot of our counterparts. Like I will never forget there's many awkward situations that I've been in where I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm in engineering. I can't talk to random people. Just because like they would look and they would look away. And they would run away. Right. And then I'm just like, oh, okay, it's not me, it's them, hopefully.
But that's a workplace too. Like I know many engineers who are, we call them, they're not customer friendly.
Yeah,
that's the term.
I can agree with that 100%.
That's a big thing I think that makes people like us, stand out a little bit more. is one thing that you guys have been saying today is you got to put yourself out there. And if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get noticed.
Agreed. 100% agree. With that, I want to give a quick shout out to the other guest that couldn't make it, just because she was the one who actually inspired this episode. Then I'm going to ask one more closing question. Is everyone good on time for the time being?
Yep.
Okay. So I do want to give a shout out to Sadie Stutzman. She is the founder of Full Stop Bakery out in Boulder, Colorado. They just celebrated their 1 year anniversary. So congrats to them. Yeah, me and Sadie had this conversation, also a UNLV engineering grad. And also she inspired this episode of Fighting Against the Grind, because now she is a full-time entrepreneur herself. She still works engineering during the day, but she has her own bakery, so she couldn't make it today. So want to give a shout out to them, and I'll put just put the info in the description and go from there. But in closing, so this is going to be a good question for all of you, is in terms of redefining success, what does success look like to you?
Success for me is living life on my own terms. I'm not having to, set an alarm clock, be on anyone else's time, it is having more flexibility. I guess that's my dream. Like, you don't have to have a ton of money to be successful in my mind. You just have to be able to live life how you want.
I like that. So for you, to summarize into one word, it would be freedom. Like overall, in control, behind the wheel, whatever Tyler wants, she's making those decisions.
Yeah, I'd say freedom or even autonomy.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Aaron, Rothman?
I think that what Tyler says is completely what I agree with. For me, success is not necessarily about money. $1 billion, $1 trillion cannot buy you a second more of time, right? And so as I've gotten older, to me, that's what's become more important, more than my salary, is, what time do I have? What freedom do I have? And so for me, success would be, having that flexibility, working from home, saving for my retirement, and hoping not to die in the climate wars.
I like that.
Yeah, I would say in a similar fashion, I don't think about, for me, I wouldn't say autonomy is a top 5 priority of my success, or what I define as success. But definitely, to your point, Rothman, I think I ask myself the question all the time, like, am I providing value with my time? Is my time being utilized the best it can be to do the things that I really internally want to do? And if the answer is yes, then I'm successful. And if not, then it's okay. Just pivot, you adjust the sails, and you continue on.
I like that. I also like that. Yeah, go ahead, Rothman.
Can I just say, Aaron, sometimes success is a pizza, a cold soda, and watching some Netflix.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I like that. No, I highly support that. Yeah, because I think, and I preach this a lot at my job, since I'm in like project management and everything, is like work-life balance is key. And I feel like the success, in my opinion, is finding that balance between both. Like whatever work looks like, whether it's employer-employee relationship, whether it's entrepreneurial, I think whatever that work looks like, as long as you're able to have that life completely balanced out to a way that it brings happiness to you. So I would say that I agree with all of you, not to be that neutral person. But okay, so before we drop, were there any other questions or comments or anything that y'all wanted to kind of state or mention?
The engineering grind is real, man.
It's real, but worth it.
It's real, worth it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's rough and it teaches you a lot.
Okay.
It's the first real grind I had, for sure.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that for myself too. Okay. Tyler, anything for you as well?
If we're talking about the engineering grind, I'm going to say the opposite. If you do not want to be an engineer, save yourself the trouble.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too. To your point, as you said, you looked at it, it's like, is this really what I want to do with my time? No. I'm going to do something that I feel is more valuable with my time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very valuable too. One of the things recently, I actually went back to UNLV and I was able to give a speech to the group, the Society of Asian Science Engineers. And they were asking for some advice. And I actually gave the question back to them. And I said, like, why are you here? Like, no, really. Why are you listening to me? Why are you in this discipline? If you can't answer that, you probably should do something else.
Yeah,
Like,
probably should pivot. Yeah.
For real.
That's such a good question. Because that also too, like I have some friends whose parents are like, you have to be an engineer and you have to do this. But it's like at the end of the day, you are living your own life. I like how Aaron's saying, do whatever you find is valuable with your time. Don't
finding that passion. Yeah. No, I agree. I like that. Okay. So what I'll do right now is I'll go ahead to like the little outro. We can still chat like afterwards and everything too. I hope y'all enjoyed like this conversation though. Like I hope that there's gonna be a lot of takeaways both from us and from the viewers as well. So, thank you for allocating the time with me today for sure. So
Absolutely.
let me read that one real quick. Maybe I'll edit that out. We'll see. So to our viewers and our listeners, what are your thoughts on going against the grind? Make sure to leave your comments below, subscribe to our channel for more content, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, much love and peace.
Just got off the clock, just got on my chill. Called on my homie Brent to see what be the deal. What you trying to do? I'm just trying to heal. Hella floated, never bloated's what I'm trying to feel. Hop in the whip and